Remove that ring before you disgrace us further.
Remove that ring before you disgrace us further. Adeeze's mother stood in the doorway of their family home in Independence Layout, Enugu, her wrapper knotted tight with a kind of anger that had been building for 3 months. Behind her, Adeeze's younger sisters, Chieri and Ngozi, pretended to sweep the compound while absorbing every word of the confrontation they'd heard a dozen times before. Adeeze looked down at the simple gold band on her left hand. 3 months married, 90 days of choosing Chidi over everyone else's approval, 90 days of paying for that choice. Mama, we've discussed this, and we will continue discussing it until sense enters your head. Her mother's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. Your cousin Ifeoma's wedding is in 2 weeks. The Okonkwas are coming from Lagos, people with money, people with connections. You cannot bring that Okada man to shame us. The words landed like stones, each one deliberately aimed. Adeeze felt her throat tighten, but she kept her voice steady. His name is Chidi. He's my husband. Your husband? Her mother's laugh was sharp, bitter. A man who carries strangers on his motorcycle for 200 naira per trip. A man with no family we can trace, no people we can ask about. What kind of marriage is this? The kind built on respect, on partnership, on foolishness. Her mother's control finally shattered. Do you know what people say? That we failed you, that you must have gotten pregnant and settled for whatever you could find. Your father hasn't spoken your name in 2 months, Adeeze. He sits in his chair every evening staring at your graduation photo, asking God where he went wrong. The pain of that image cut deep. Adeeze had stopped visiting her father 6 weeks ago because seeing the disappointment in his eyes hurt worse than her mother's anger. I need to go, she said quietly, gathering her handbag. I'm meeting Chidi after his shift. Of course you are. Running back to that single room you share in Ogui Road like some village girl who doesn't know better. Her mother's eyes swept over Adeeze's work clothes, the neat skirt and blouse she wore to her job at Diamond Bank. You had everything. Good job, nice clothes, respect. Now look at you. Sister Okada, that's what they call you at that bank. You think I don't hear things. Adeeze walked past her mother without responding, past her sisters who quickly looked away, out into the dusty street where afternoon heat shimmered off the asphalt. She flagged down an Okada, not Chidi who would be working the New Haven route until evening, and climbed on behind a stranger. Ogui Road, near St. Joseph's Cathedral. The ride through Enugu's chaotic traffic gave her 20 minutes to steady her breathing, to push down the hurt, to remind herself why she'd made this choice. By the time she reached the compound where she and Chidi rented a single room, she'd almost succeeded in controlling the trembling in her hands. Home. 1 room in a compound with 7 other families, sharing a bathroom and kitchen, listening to Mrs. Okonkwo's radio sermons bleeding through thin walls every morning. The room held a bed, a standing wardrobe, a small table, 2 plastic chairs and a kerosene stove in the corner. Barely enough space to turn around, but it was theirs. Adeeze changed out of her work clothes. She still had her job at Diamond Bank, though the whispered nickname Sister Okada followed her through the halls now, a constant reminder of her social descent. She pulled on a wrapper and blouse, started preparing yam porridge for dinner, her hands moving through the familiar motions while her mind replayed her mother's words. Her phone buzzed, a message from Ifeoma. Ada, I'm begging you. My in-laws are very particular people. Chief Okonkwo knows governors. If you must come, please come alone. Don't bring your husband. I can't have that embarrassment at my wedding. Adeeze stared at the message until her vision blurred. Then she deleted it and kept cooking. If you're enjoying this story of love, family pressure, and hidden truths, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep African stories that touch the heart and mind. New stories every week. Now, let's see what happens next.
Chidi came home at 7:30, smelling of exhaust fumes and road dust, his face lined with the grime of Unugu's unpaved side streets. He pulled off his helmet, a good quality one Adeeze had noticed, better than most Okada riders wore, and hung it on the nail by the door. Then he looked at her face and knew. What happened? She wanted to lie, wanted to say everything was fine. But 3 months of marriage had taught her that Chidi could read silence better than most people could read words. My family. They don't want you at Ifeoma's wedding. He nodded slowly, unsurprised. He moved to the basin they kept by the door and started washing his hands and face, the water running brown with dust. "Do you want to go?" "I want them to accept you, accept us." "That's not what I asked." He dried his face with their shared towel, then turned to face her. "Do you, Adaeze, want to attend your cousin's wedding?" "Yes, but not like this, not with you hidden away like something shameful." Chidi was 32, lean and muscular from years of physical work, his hands calloused but clean. His eyes held a perpetual calmness that sometimes frustrated her. Nothing seemed to shake him. Not her family's rejection, not the contempt of strangers, not the poverty of their circumstances. "Then we'll go together," he said simply. "They can handle their feelings however they need to." "Chidi, you don't understand." Adaeze set down her cooking spoon, turned to face him fully. "These people, my uncle Emeka is a retired permanent secretary. He knows commissioners, governors. My aunt married into the Nuosu family. They have properties all over Unugu. They're going to look at you like—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "Like I'm beneath them, I know." He touched her cheek gently, and she leaned into his palm despite her frustration. "Ada, I've told you before, I know what I'm asking you to carry. The question is whether you still want to carry it." It was the same question he'd asked before they married, standing in the rain outside Diamond Bank on an evening when everything had felt impossible. She'd been crying. A customer had screamed at her for 30 minutes over a transaction error that wasn't her fault, and her supervisor, Mrs. Adeleke, had stood by silently, letting it happen, unwilling to defend a subordinate against a big man. Chidi had waited with his motorcycle, said nothing, just handed her a clean handkerchief. When she'd finally composed herself enough to give him her address, he'd asked softly, "Do you want to talk about it?" No one else had asked. Not her friends, not her family, not the other Okada riders who just wanted their fare and their next customer. Just this quiet man who'd been her regular rider for 5 months, who never complained of traffic, who always confirmed her destination, even though he knew it by heart, who somehow remembered that she preferred riding on the left side because the right side made her nervous near heavy traffic. They'd started talking, small things at first, weather, work frustrations, favorite foods, the best routes through Enugu's impossible traffic. Then deeper things. His thoughts on family, her dreams beyond the bank, the weight of expectations they both carried in different ways, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who never really saw you. 7 months of conversations on the back of a motorcycle, her arms wrapped around the waist of a man she was starting to trust in ways she didn't fully understand. Then dinners at small bukas where the food was good and cheap. Then Sunday afternoons at the park, sitting on benches, talking about everything and nothing. Then his question, asked with characteristic directness that both terrified and thrilled her. "I want to marry you, but I need you to understand what that means. I'm an Okada rider. I'll probably always be an Okada rider. I live simply because that's what I believe in. If you need someone who can give you status, security, impressive in-laws, I'm not that person. But if you want someone who will see you, value you, build something real with you, I can be that." She'd said yes. Her parents nearly disowned her. Her friends had staged an intervention. Her colleagues at the bank had looked at her with pity and confusion. But she'd said yes anyway, because something in Chidi's eyes told her this was the most honest offer she'd ever received. Now, standing in their cramped room with yam porridge bubbling on the kerosene stove, filling the air with the smell of palm oil and crayfish, Adaeze looked at her husband and made her choice again. "I want to carry it. I want to go to that wedding with you. Let them see what choosing love looks like." Chidi smiled, rare and warm, the kind of smile that made the room feel less small. "Then we'll need to look our best. I have some money saved. Tomorrow we'll go to Ogbete Market, buy something fine." "From where? Your Okada savings?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended, edged with the frustration of not fully understanding their finances.
Something flickered in his eyes. Not hurt, but something else. Something that looked almost like regret. I manage my money carefully, Ada. You'd be surprised what careful management and discipline can build over time. It wasn't the first time she'd noticed things that didn't quite add up. The cash she sometimes had that seemed too much for daily Okada earnings. The way he spoke about business and investment like someone educated, though he'd never mentioned attending university. His phone was newer than hers, a good smartphone, not the cheap ones most Okada riders used. His shoes, though dusty, were quality leather that he polished every Sunday morning. His helmet, his gloves, even the motorcycle itself, all well-maintained, all better quality than necessary. And there was the way he carried himself, the posture, the vocabulary, the calm authority in his voice when he spoke. These weren't things money could buy, but they suggested a background, an education, a life before Okada riding that he never discussed. But every time she started to ask, something stopped her. Fear, maybe. Fear that questioning would break whatever fragile trust existed between them. Fear that the answers might complicate the simple narrative she'd built in her mind. Honest man, honest work, honest love. Okay, she said finally, pushing down her doubts. Tomorrow we'll go shopping. She turned back to the stove, stirring the porridge, but she felt Chidi's eyes on her back. When she glanced over her shoulder, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Something that looked like love, mixed with something that might be guilt.
Saturday morning at Agbete Main Market was controlled chaos, a symphony of traders shouting prices, customers haggling in Igbo and Pidgin, the smell of fresh tomatoes and peppers mixing with dried fish and the acrid scent of generator fumes. Adieze led Chidi through the maze of stalls toward the fabric section, dodging women balancing baskets on their heads and children darting between shoppers. "We're looking for senator material for you," she explained, touching his arm to guide him past a particularly aggressive trader. "That's the formal menswear with embroidery, and I'll get Ankara or lace, something that won't embarrass my family more than my choice of husband already has." She'd meant it as a joke, but it came out bitter. Chidi stopped walking. Right there in the middle of the crowded market aisle, he stopped and turned to face her. "Ada, listen to me. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing. You chose a life built on truth and respect. If your family can't see the value in that, it's their blindness, not your failure." A woman pushing past with a basket of yams muttered, "Wahala for who marry poor man." Adieze felt her face burn, but Chidi seemed unbothered. He took her hand and kept walking. They found a fabric stall run by a sharp-eyed woman who sized them up in seconds. Her expression shifted when she saw Adieze's good clothes and shoes, then shifted again when she noticed Chidi's dusty Okada rider appearance. "Sister, welcome. Come see quality material." The trader's enthusiasm was aimed entirely at Adieze, as if Chidi was invisible. "I get Ankara from Lagos, lace from China, everything fine. What can you they find?" Adieze selected a cream-colored senator material with gold threading, elegant but not too expensive. The trader quoted 15,000 naira. Adieze countered with 8,000. They settled on 11,000 after 10 minutes of intense negotiation that Chidi watched with quiet amusement. "And for you, madame?" The trader gestured at purple lace material that Adieze had been eyeing. "This one na 15,000, but because your husband gets sense to marry fine woman like you." The morning of Ifeoma's wedding arrived with Mrs. Okonkwo's evangelical radio program blasting through the walls at 5:30 a.m., the pastor shouting about prosperity and breakthrough. Adieze woke to find Chidi already up, doing push-ups in the narrow space between their bed and wardrobe, his movements controlled and precise. "You're nervous," she observed, sitting up. "Should I be?" "My family is going to be brutal." He finished his set, stood up barely winded. "Then I'll try to give them nothing to work with except their own prejudices." Despite everything, she smiled. "You're infuriating sometimes, you know that?" "You've mentioned it."
He came to sit beside her on the bed. Ada, I need you to hear something before we go today. No matter what happens, no matter what they say or how they treat us, you're the only opinion that matters to me. If you can walk out of that wedding still choosing me, still choosing us, then everyone else is just noise. She took his hand, laced her fingers through his. I'm not going to stop choosing you, Chidi. I'm just tired of having to defend that choice constantly. Then don't defend it, just live it. Show them what real partnership looks like, even if they're too blind to see it. They dressed carefully, taking turns in the shared bathroom, navigating around the other compound residents who were also preparing for their day. Adaeze applied her makeup in the small mirror nailed to their wall, her hands steady despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. Chidi in his cream senator suit looked transformed, distinguished, handsome, carrying himself with natural authority. The suit fit perfectly, the tailor having worked a minor miracle with the measurements. Adaeze wore the purple lace with gold threading, her hair braided and wrapped in gele that had taken her 3 hours to perfect the night before. Looking at them reflected in their small mirror, Adaeze thought they looked good together, better than good. They looked like a couple who belonged together, who'd built something real. Ready? Chidi asked. No, she thought, but she nodded anyway. They left Ogui Road on Chidi's yellow Bajaj motorcycle, Adaeze sitting side saddle behind him to protect her lace dress, her arms wrapped around his waist. The ride to Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church in New Haven took 20 minutes through Saturday morning traffic. The church parking lot was filled with expensive cars, Lexus RX SUVs, Mercedes G-Wagons, Range Rover Sports, even a Bentley that belonged to Chief Okonkwo, Ifeoma's future father-in-law. Security men in black suits directed the luxury vehicles to VIP spots near the church entrance. Chidi parked his motorcycle between a Lexus and a Mercedes. The contrast was stark, almost comical. A security guard immediately approached, his face stern. "Oh God, you no fit park here. There's no VIP section." "Where should we park?" Chidi asked, politely. "For back, near the generator house. Okada no supposed stay for this side." Adaeze felt shame burn through her, but Chidi's expression remained neutral. "No problem, we'll move." They relocated the motorcycle to the back of the compound, near the generators and service vehicles, where it sat alone like evidence of their social transgression. As they walked toward the church entrance, Adaeze felt every eye track their movement. Her cousin Obiageli materialized in peach asoebi and barely concealed disdain. "Adaeze, you actually came!" Her voice carried across the parking lot, drawing more attention. "And you brought him on his motorcycle to a society wedding? Chai!" People turned to stare. Women in expensive lace whispered behind their hands. Men in agbadas looked amused. Adaeze felt Chidi's hand find the small of her back, steady and grounding. "Good morning, Obiageli," she said, keeping her voice level. "This is my husband, Chidi Bube. Chidi, this is my cousin." Chidi extended his hand. "Pleased to meet you." Obiageli looked at his hand like it might contaminate her French manicure. She didn't shake it. "Yes, well, the church is filling up. You should find seats quickly, at the back." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement, leaving Chidi's hand hanging in the air. He lowered it without comment, his expression unchanged. Inside, Our Lady of Lourdes was magnificent, white and gold decorations, professional choir warming up, massive flower arrangements that probably cost more than Adaeze's monthly salary. Guests in expensive asoebi filled the pews, their combined wealth creating an atmosphere of exclusivity that Adaeze's skin prickled. Her family occupied the first 3 rows on the bride's side, a coordinated sea of purple asoebi that she couldn't afford to buy. Her mother, her father, Uncle Emka, Aunt Nikiru, her sisters, all of them sitting in places of honor, all of them pretending not to see her as she and Chidi walked down the side aisle. They found seats in the second-to-last row, next to an elderly woman who looked kind and a young couple who seemed as uncomfortable as Adaeze felt. These were the marginal relatives, the ones without status or money, the ones who got courtesy invitations but no asoebi, no special treatment. The young woman next to them leaned over and whispered, "First time at one of these big society weddings?" "No," Adaeze whispered back, "first time as an outsider." The woman nodded in understanding. It shows who people really are, doesn't it? How they treat the ones they think don't matter. The ceremony began. Ifeoma entered in clouds of white satin and Swarovski crystals, her dress probably costing more than Adaeze's monthly salary. Her groom, Dubem, was handsome and confident in his custom tuxedo, a bank executive whose family owned half of New Haven. Father Benedict performed the ceremony with practiced elegance, speaking about love and partnership and building a life together. Adaeze tried to focus on the beauty of the sacrament, the sacred promises being made, but all she could feel was the weight of judgment pressing down on her shoulders, making it hard to breathe. When Father Benedict said, "You may kiss your bride," and Dubem lifted Ifeoma's veil, Adaeze felt Chidi's hand find hers under the folds of her lace dress. He squeezed gently, and she squeezed back, holding on to his certainty like a lifeline. The reception, she knew, would be worse.
Golden Gate Event Center had been transformed into a palace of purple and gold. Massive chandeliers hung from the ceiling, each one probably worth more than everything Adaeze owned. Round tables covered in purple silk held elaborate centerpieces of roses and lilies. The head table was elevated on a platform, ensuring the bride and groom would literally look down on their guests. The MC, a loud man in a glittering purple agbada, worked the crowd with practiced enthusiasm. "Welcome, welcome to the wedding of the year, the joining of two great families, the Okonkwo's and the Uche's. Ah, we are favored today." Adaeze and Chidi were directed to table 12, far from the head table, tucked near the kitchen entrance where servers rushed past with trays of food. Their table had no centerpiece, no special decorations, no gift bags, just 12 plastic chairs around a purple tablecloth. They sat down next to an elderly couple, two middle-aged women who looked like distant relatives, and the same young couple from church. None of them were wearing asoebi. None of them looked happy to be there. The MC's voice boomed across the hall. "Now let us recognize our special guests. Table 1, Chief Okonkwo and his beautiful family. Chief, you are welcome. You have honored us. Everyone, let's give Chief Okonkwo a round of applause." Chief Okonkwo stood, waving regally, his traditional chief attire glittering with gold embroidery. His table erupted in applause. Camera flashes lit up the room. The MC continued his praise for a full 2 minutes. "Table 2, Senator Nwosu and his lovely wife. Senator, we see you. Thank you for blessing us with your presence." More applause, more camera flashes, more evidence of who mattered in this world. The MC worked through the VIP tables one by one. Commissioners, doctors, business owners, retired civil servants. Each recognition was accompanied by elaborate praise, by acknowledgement of their importance, by confirmation of the social hierarchy that placed some people above others. Adaese's parents sat at table 4, with Uncle Emeka and Aunt Nkiru. When the MC called their table, her father stood and waved briefly. His eyes swept the room and landed on Adaeze for just a moment before moving on, as if she were a stranger. The pain of that deliberate non-recognition made Adaese's chest tighten. "Table 12, other guests, we see you too. Make una wave if you won." No one at their table waved. The elderly man shook his head slightly.
One of the middle-aged women stared at her plate. The young husband looked angry. Adaese wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. Chidi leaned close and whispered, "The jollof rice smells good." She wanted to scream, wanted to stand up and shout that her husband was worth 10 of these pompous men in their borrowed glory. But what could she say? That he was kind? That he listened? That he made her feel valued? Those things meant nothing here. Here, only money and status spoke loudly enough to be heard. Food came, small portions on large plates, the universal language of upscale catering trying to stretch expensive ingredients. The jollof rice was actually good, the meat tender, the salad fresh. Adaese ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her mind focused on surviving the next few hours. Then the bride and groom began their rounds, greeting guests table by table, with a photographer and videographer in tow. Adaese watched them move through the VIP section, laughing, hugging, posing for pictures that would fill Instagram feeds for weeks, collecting sprayed money and gift envelopes. At table 11, Ifeoma hugged an elderly couple and posed for photos. At table 13, more embraces and camera poses. Table 12, they walked past without stopping. Ifeoma's eyes met Adaese's for just a moment, and in that moment, Adaese saw everything. Calculation, embarrassment, the conscious decision that acknowledging her cousin and the Okada rider husband wasn't worth the social cost. They kept walking, the photographer following, recording only the moments that mattered, only the people who counted. The elderly woman at their table made a small sound of sympathy. "Nay, family can be very wicked sometimes." Adaese nodded, not trusting her voice. Under the table, Chidi found her hand again and held it tightly. "Want to leave?" he asked softly. She did, desperately, but leaving would be surrender, would be proof that they didn't belong, would give her family the satisfaction of being right about her terrible choice. "No," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "We stay, we eat their food, we witness their celebration, and we leave with our dignity intact." "That's my Ada," Chidi said, and she heard genuine pride in his voice. The reception continued, speeches praising the family's greatness, toasts to the couple's bright future, cake cutting accompanied by more camera flashes, money spraying during the couple's dance that left the floor littered with naira notes. Adaese sat through it all, her face a mask of composure, while her heart broke in small, quiet ways. Around 8:30, as the party was winding down and guests were beginning to leave, Adaese excused herself to use the restroom. She needed air, needed space, needed 5 minutes away from the suffocating performance of belonging to a world that had made clear she was no longer welcome. She walked outside, into the night air, past the valet station, where luxury cars were being retrieved, towards the back of the venue, where the world was quieter and she could breathe.
The parking lot behind Golden Gate Event Center was dimly lit, the noise from the reception muted to a distant hum. Adaese walked toward the generators and service vehicles, toward where Chidi's yellow motorcycle sat alone, and that's when she heard male voices and laughter. She slowed, then stopped behind a parked Land Cruiser when she recognized her husband's voice. Chidi was surrounded by 3 young men in expensive watches and designer agbatas, friends of the groom. She recognized them from the ceremony. They were talking to him with a mix of curiosity and condescension that made her stomach tighten. "But guy, how you do 'em?" one of them was asking, genuine bewilderment in his voice. "Fine babe like that, working for bank, educated, family get connection. She just wake up one day say she want marry Okada man. I beg, which kind juju you use? You fit teach us?" The others laughed. Chidi was checking his motorcycle tire, his movements unhurried, unbothered. "No juju," he said mildly, "just conversation." "Conversation, K?" The second man laughed harder. "Guy, you too humble. You fit talk true, you get something for side, you dey do yahoo, 419, because this thing no make sense at all. Ordinary Okada cannot make fine girl with sense marry you." "Maybe she saw something you can't see," Chidi said, still not looking up from his inspection of the tire. The third man, who seemed slightly less condescending than the others, spoke more carefully. "I beg, no vexo. We just de wonder. Your wife, she fine. He clear say she get sense. Why she go choose this kind life when she feet get better?" Now Chidi straightened up and met their eyes. His voice was calm, but carried an edge that made Araeze lean forward to hear better. Better, according to who? You? Her family? Society? He paused, and even from her hiding place, she could feel the intensity of his gaze. Maybe she understands that a man's value isn't measured by his job title or how many cars he drives. Maybe she's wise enough to see past appearances to character. Maybe, his voice sharpened, she's better than all of you at understanding what actually matters in life. Silence fell. The first man who'd made the juju comment shifted uncomfortably. The second looked away. Only the third man held Chidi's gaze. "You're an interesting guy," the third man said. "Philosophical Okada rider. I never see him before." He clapped Chidi on the shoulder, more respectfully now. "But seriously, take care of your wife, you hear? She's a good woman. Any man we get her should know say he's lucky." "I know exactly how lucky I am," Chidi said quietly. They walked away, their voices fading into the night. Chidi went back to his motorcycle, running his hand along the seat in that habitual way, then pulling out his phone to check something before putting it away. Araeze stepped out from behind the Land Cruiser. "Chidi!" He turned, completely unsurprised to see her there. "How long were you listening?" "Long enough." She walked closer, her heels clicking on the concrete. "You defended me, defended us." "Of course, what else would I do?" "You could have told them the truth, whatever truth there is that I still don't fully understand." The words spilled out, months of confusion and trust and fear mixing together. "Chidi, I'm your wife. I've sacrificed everything to be with you. My family, my reputation, my peace of mind. And I still don't completely understand who you are, where your money really comes from, why you live this way, what you're protecting or hiding or testing." He was quiet for a long moment, looking at her in the sodium light of the parking lot with an expression she'd never seen before. Vulnerability, fear, something that looked almost like pain. "You're right," he said finally. "You've carried so much more than I ever meant for you to carry, and you deserve answers." He took a step closer. "Ada, I promise you, very soon everything will make sense. Every question you have, I'll answer. But I need you to trust me just a little bit longer, just a little more. Can you do that?" "Why should I?" The question came out harder than she intended. "Why should I keep trusting blindly when you won't give me any reason except your word?" "Because I've never lied to you, not once. I've withheld information, yes. I've kept parts of my life private, but everything I've told you about who I am, what I value, how I feel about you, all of that is completely, absolutely true. The parts I haven't shared yet don't change any of that fundamental truth. But they might change how I see you. Maybe, or maybe," he reached for her hand, held it between both of his, "maybe when you know everything, you'll understand that I was trying to protect something precious, something that could only be built if we did it without certain complications." Araeze looked at their joined hands. 3 months ago, she had placed her trust in this man based on instinct, on feeling, on the way he made her feel seen in a world that constantly looked past her. That trust had cost her almost everything she'd valued before meeting him. "How much longer?" she asked. "Not long, I promise you, Ada, not long at all." She wanted to demand more, wanted to push until he cracked and told her everything. But looking at his face, seeing the genuine fear that she might walk away, seeing the love mixed with whatever secret he was carrying, she made a choice. "Okay, a little longer. But Chidi, when you do tell me the truth, it better be worth all of this. It better make sense of everything." "It will," he promised. He pulled her close, and she let herself rest against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, breathing in his familiar scent of motorcycle exhaust and the cologne he wore only for special occasions. Around them, the party continued inside, the music and laughter evidence of a world that had no room for people like them. But here, in the parking lot, in the quiet spaces between the noise, they had each other. For now, that would have to be enough. Before we continue with what happens next, and trust me, you won't believe where this story goes, please hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying this journey. Your support helps us bring more powerful African stories to life. Now, let's see how Araeze's world is about to change forever.
The parking lot behind Golden Gate Event Center was dimly lit, the noise from the reception muted to a distant hum. Araeze walked toward the generators and service vehicles, toward where Chidi's yellow motorcycle sat alone, and that's when she heard male voices and laughter. She slowed, then stopped behind a parked Land Cruiser when she recognized her husband's voice. Chidi was surrounded by 3 young men in expensive watches and designer agbadas, friends of the groom. She recognized them from the ceremony. They were talking to him with a mix of curiosity and condescension that made her stomach tighten. "But guy, how you do 'em?" one of them was asking, genuine bewilderment in his voice. "Fine babe la dat, working for bank, educated, family get connection. She just wake up one day say she want marry Okada man. I beg, which kind juju you use? You fit teach us?" The others laughed. Chidi was checking his motorcycle tire, his movements unhurried, unbothered. "No juju," he said mildly, "just conversation." "Conversation, que?" The second man laughed harder. "Guy, you too humble. You fit talk true. You get something for side. You dey do yahoo, 419, because this thing no make sense at all. Ordinary Okada cannot make fine girl with sense marry you." "Maybe she saw something you can't see," Chidi said, still not looking up from his inspection of the tire. The third man, who seemed slightly less condescending than the others, spoke more carefully. "I beg, no vexo. We just dey wonder. Your wife, she fine. He clear say she get sense. Why she go choose this kind life when she fit get better?" Now Chidi straightened up and met their eyes. His voice was calm, but carried an edge that made Araeze lean forward to hear better. Better, according to who? You? Her family? Society? He paused, and even from her hiding place, she could feel the intensity of his gaze. Maybe she understands that a man's value isn't measured by his job title or how many cars he drives. Maybe she's wise enough to see past appearances to character. Maybe, his voice sharpened, she's better than all of you at understanding what actually matters in life. Silence fell. The first man who'd made the juju comment shifted uncomfortably. The second looked away. Only the third man held Chidi's gaze. "You're an interesting guy," the third man said. "Philosophical Okada rider. I never see him before." He clapped Chidi on the shoulder, more respectfully now. "But seriously, take care of your wife, you hear? She's a good woman. Any man we get her should know say he's lucky." "I know exactly how lucky I am," Chidi said quietly. They walked away, their voices fading into the night. Chidi went back to his motorcycle, running his hand along the seat in that habitual way, then pulling out his phone to check something before putting it away. Araeze stepped out from behind the Land Cruiser. "Chidi!" He turned, completely unsurprised to see her there. "How long were you listening?" "Long enough." She walked closer, her heels clicking on the concrete. "You defended me, defended us." "Of course, what else would I do?" "You could have told them the truth, whatever truth there is that I still don't fully understand." The words spilled out, months of confusion and trust and fear mixing together. "Chidi, I'm your wife. I've sacrificed everything to be with you. My family, my reputation, my peace of mind. And I still don't completely understand who you are, where your money really comes from, why you live this way, what you're protecting or hiding or testing." He was quiet for a long moment, looking at her in the sodium light of the parking lot with an expression she'd never seen before. Vulnerability, fear, something that looked almost like pain. "You're right," he said finally. "You've carried so much more than I ever meant for you to carry, and you deserve answers." He took a step closer.
Ada, I promise you, very soon everything will make sense. Every question you have, I'll answer. But I need you to trust me just a little bit longer, just a little more. Can you do that? Why should I? The question came out harder than she intended. Why should I keep trusting blindly when you won't give me any reason except your word? Because I've never lied to you, not once. I've withheld information, yes. I've kept parts of my life private, but everything I've told you about who I am, what I value, how I feel about you, all of that is completely, absolutely true. The parts I haven't shared yet don't change any of that fundamental truth. But they might change how I see you. Maybe, or maybe, he reached for her hand, held it between both of his, maybe when you know everything, you'll understand that I was trying to protect something precious, something that could only be built if we did it without certain complications. Araeze looked at their joined hands. 3 months ago, she had placed her trust in this man based on instinct, on feeling, on the way he made her feel seen in a world that constantly looked past her. That trust had cost her almost everything she'd valued before meeting him. "How much longer?" she asked. "Not long, I promise you, Ada, not long at all." She wanted to demand more, wanted to push until he cracked and told her everything. But looking at his face, seeing the genuine fear that she might walk away, seeing the love mixed with whatever secret he was carrying, she made a choice. "Okay, a little longer. But Chidi, when you do tell me the truth, it better be worth all of this. It better make sense of everything." "It will," he promised. He pulled her close, and she let herself rest against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, breathing in his familiar scent of motorcycle exhaust and the cologne he wore only for special occasions. Around them, the party continued inside, the music and laughter evidence of a world that had no room for people like them. But here, in the parking lot, in the quiet spaces between the noise, they had each other. For now, that would have to be enough. Before we continue with what happens next, and trust me, you won't believe where this story goes, please hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying this journey. Your support helps us bring more powerful African stories to life. Now, let's see how Araeze's world is about to change forever.
Life settled into uneasy routine after Ifeoma's wedding. Araeze went to work at Diamond Bank every morning, endured the whispers and pitying looks from colleagues who called her Sister Okada when they thought she couldn't hear. She learned to hold her head high, to smile at the mockery, to treat every customer with professionalism, even when their eyes judged her for choices they couldn't understand. Chidi continued riding his Okada, leaving before dawn and returning at dusk, his body tired but his spirit unbroken. They lived simply in their single room, cooking on their kerosene stove, sharing their small space with a companionship that felt more solid than any mansion. Her family's silence continued. No calls, no visits, nothing but the absence that used to be filled with her mother's voice and her father's presence. 6 months passed like this. 6 months of building a life in the margins, of choosing each other daily, of slowly accepting that this was what love cost when you refused to compromise your truth for other people's comfort. Then, on a Tuesday evening in September, everything changed. Araeze was preparing a goosey soup when her phone rang. Chinyere's number. Her sister hadn't called in 3 months. "Hello?" "Ada!" Chinyere's voice was high with panic, breaking on her name. "Ada, you need to come to UNTH now, right now. It's Papa." Araeze's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "He collapsed at his friend's house. They said it's his heart. They rushed him to University Teaching Hospital, and the doctors—" Chinyere sobbed, unable to continue. "Chinye, breathe. Tell me what the doctor said." "They say he needs surgery. His heart, something about blocked arteries. They need to operate immediately, but they're asking for money first. So much money, Ada. Mama is going crazy. Uncle Emeka is making calls, but nobody has this kind of money just sitting around." "How much?" Adaeze heard herself ask, her voice sounding distant, mechanical.
2 million naira. For the surgery and the hospital deposit and everything. Ada, where are we going to find 2 million naira? The room tilted. 2 million naira. Adaeze looked at their small shelf where she kept her savings book. She had 140,000 naira saved over 6 months, every spare kobo from her salary carefully put away. It was nowhere near enough. I'm coming right now. She hung up and turned to find Chidi in the doorway. He'd been outside talking to another rider, but he must have heard her tone. What's wrong? She told him. The words came out in broken fragments. Her father, heart attack, surgery needed immediately, 2 million naira, no time, no money, no options. Chidi listened without interrupting, his face growing serious. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, thinking. Get dressed, he said finally. We're going to the hospital. But the money? I'll handle it. Get dressed, Ada. Your father needs you there. She wanted to ask how, wanted to demand an explanation for how an Okada rider could handle 2 million naira, but there was no time for questions. Her father was dying. They rode through Enugu's evening traffic on Chidi's motorcycle, the city's usual chaos feeling surreal against the emergency. Adaeze clung to Chidi's back, her mind spinning with fear and confusion and desperate hope. University of Nigeria Teaching Hospital's emergency wing was bright with fluorescent lights and heavy with the smell of antiseptic and fear. Adaeze found her family in the waiting area, her mother with swollen red eyes, her sisters Chinyere and Ngozi clinging to each other, Uncle Emeka on his phone barking at someone about loans, Aunt Nkiru daubing at tears with a handkerchief. Ada! Her mother stood up when she saw her, then froze when she saw Chidi behind her. For a moment, maternal desperation warred with 6 months of anger. Desperation won. Thank God you came. They won't operate until we pay. Uncle Emeka is trying to raise the money, but where's the accounts office? Chidi interrupted quietly. Uncle Emeka looked up from his phone. Why? Because I'm going to pay for the surgery. Show me where to pay. The waiting room went absolutely silent. Even the other families nearby stopped talking and turned to stare. Uncle Emeka's face twisted with suspicion and confusion. You pay for surgery? With what money? With my money, Chidi said calmly. Ada, stay with your family. I'll handle the payment. He turned to a passing nurse. Excuse me, where is the accounts office for emergency surgery payments? The nurse, looking bewildered by the tension she'd walked into, pointed down a hallway. Second door to the left. Chidi walked away without another word, leaving Adaeze standing in front of her family's shocked faces. Ada, her mother whispered, where is your husband getting 2 million naira? I don't know, Mama. And it was true. She didn't know, but she was about to find out. 20 minutes later, Chidi returned with a receipt. He handed it to Adaeze's mother. The surgery has been paid for in full. The doctors are preparing now. They said someone should go inform them that payment is complete so they can proceed. Adaeze's mother took the receipt with shaking hands. She stared at it, 2 million naira paid in full via bank transfer, like it was written in a foreign language. Uncle Emeka grabbed the receipt from her hand, his eyes scanning it rapidly. This says the transfer came from CJ Okafor Logistics Limited. Who is CJ Okafor? Why would a logistics company pay for this surgery? Because I authorized the transfer. CJ is me, Chidiebu Joshua, my company. The words dropped into the waiting room like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock that spread outward in visible waves. Your company, Uncle Emeka repeated slowly. You, an Okada rider, has a logistics company that can transfer 2 million naira on a Tuesday evening? Yes. Aunt Nkiru found her voice. This is fraud. It has to be. Internet fraud. Yahoo, something illegal. Nobody who rides Okada for a living has 2 million naira sitting in a company account. Mama, please,
Chinyere interrupted. Papa is dying, and you're worried about where the money came from? Let the doctors operate first, then we can ask questions. A nurse approached. Family of Mr. Uche, we have received payment confirmation. The surgical team is ready. We'll begin immediately. Araeze's mother nodded numbly. The nurse disappeared back through the emergency doors. Then all eyes turned to Chidi, standing calm and quiet against the wall, and to Araeze, who was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. I think, Uncle Emeka said with dangerous quietness, that we all need to have a very serious conversation about who you really are, young man, and what kind of situation you've brought into this family.
The surgery took 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours of waiting in uncomfortable plastic chairs while questions hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Uncle Emeka made phone calls, lots of phone calls. Araeze could hear him in the hallway, speaking to people in government, asking about companies, running checks. His voice grew increasingly confused, then thoughtful, then something else she couldn't identify. Aunt Nikiru sat with her arms crossed, her eyes moving between Araeze and Chidi with naked suspicion. If this is stolen money, we'll all be implicated. The EFCC will come for all of us. The money isn't stolen, Chidi said quietly. Then where did you get it? Explain that to us. Make it make sense. But Chidi just shook his head. When your husband, he nodded toward Araeze's mother, is safe and recovering, then I'll explain everything. Right now, all that matters is his life. Chinyere brought chai from the hospital canteen. Ngozi paced the hallway, her phone clutched in her hand, updating relatives who'd called asking for news. Araeze's mother sat silent, the receipt still clutched in her hands, tears running down her face. Araeze sat next to Chidi, their hands linked, and tried to process what had just happened. Her husband, her Okada rider husband, had just transferred 2 million naira from a company account. His company account. CJ Okafor Logistics. She wanted to be angry, wanted to demand answers, but her father was in surgery, and fear for his life was bigger than any other emotion. Finally, around 1 a.m., the surgeon emerged. Dr. Okafor, no relation to Chidi, he clarified with a small smile, looked tired but satisfied. The surgery was successful. We performed a triple bypass. Your husband had 3 severely blocked arteries. Another few hours and... He trailed off, the implication clear. He'll need to stay in ICU for at least a week, then another week in recovery. But if all goes well, he should make a full recovery. Araeze's mother collapsed in her chair, sobbing with relief. Chinyere and Ngozi hugged each other, crying. Uncle Emeka closed his eyes and whispered what might have been a prayer. "Can we see him?" Araeze asked. 2 people at a time, very briefly. He's still sedated. Araeze's mother stood up. "Ada, come with me." They followed the doctor to ICU. Her father looked small against the white sheets, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped steadily, reassuringly. His face was peaceful in medicated sleep. "Papa," Araeze whispered, taking his hand. Her mother stood on the other side of the bed, stroking her husband's hair. "He's alive because of your husband, the husband we told you to leave, the husband we mocked and rejected." She looked up at Araeze, tears streaming down her face. "Ada, who did you marry?" "I don't know, Mama," Araeze admitted, "but I'm about to find out." When they returned to the waiting room, Uncle Emeka was ending another phone call. He looked at Chidi with an expression that was part confusion, part grudging respect. "I made some calls," he said, "to people I know in the Ministry of Commerce, to contacts in the business community." He paused. "CJ Okafor Logistics is a legitimate registered company, started 2 years ago, specializes in freight and distribution across the Southeast, currently operates 10 trucks and employs about 30 people, clean record, proper licensing, pays taxes." He studied Chidi carefully.
The person I spoke with said the owner is young, maybe early 30s, keeps a low profile but runs a solid business, growing steadily, reputable. That's me, Chidi confirmed. But why? Aunt Nikiru demanded. Why would someone who owns a successful company ride Okada? Why would you pretend to be poor? I'm not pretending anything, Chidi said. I ride Okada because I choose to. I live simply because I believe in simplicity. My company exists, my business is real, but that's not who I am. It's just what I do. That makes no sense. Maybe not to you, Chidi said, his voice still calm but with an edge now, but it makes perfect sense to me and to Ada when she decides if it makes sense to her. He turned to Adeeze's mother. Ma, your husband is going to be fine. That's what matters tonight. The rest, who I am, why I live the way I do, all of it, we can discuss when he's awake and can hear it too. He deserves to know the truth, and I'd rather explain it once to everyone than repeat it multiple times. Adeeze's mother studied him for a long moment. Okay, when my husband wakes, you will explain everything. But Chidi, her voice softened, thank you. Thank you for saving his life. Whatever else is true, whatever else we discover, thank you for that. You're welcome, Ma. The waiting room settled into exhausted quiet. Some people dozed in chairs, others just sat, processing. Uncle Emeka made one more phone call, speaking in low tones that Adeeze couldn't quite hear. Chidi looked at Adeeze. Want to go outside, get some air? They walked out to the hospital parking lot. Dawn was beginning to break over Enugu, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Chidi's motorcycle sat alone in the visitors section, patient and familiar. You're angry, he said. I don't know what I am, Adeeze answered honestly. Grateful that my father will live, confused about who I married, hurt that you kept this from me, afraid of what else I don't know. She turned to face him. Chidi, no more delays, no more soon. When Papa wakes, you're going to tell us everything, the whole truth, and then I get to decide if I can live with it. Fair enough, he said quietly. I promise, Ada, when your father is conscious and can hear me, I'll explain everything. Every question you have, I'll answer. Every secret I've kept, I'll reveal. And then, he swallowed hard, then you'll decide if you still want to be married to me. The fear in his voice was real. The vulnerability was genuine. Whatever he was hiding, whatever truth he was protecting, he was terrified that it would cost him everything. Adeeze looked at the man she'd married 6 months ago, the man who'd just saved her father's life, the man who apparently owned a legitimate business but chose to ride Okada anyway, and she felt a strange mix of love and anger and desperate curiosity. When Papa wakes, she repeated, no more running. No more running, he agreed.
3 days later, Adeeze's father was moved from ICU to a private room, paid for by Chidi's company, though no one commented on that anymore. The questions had been building, multiplying, becoming too large to ignore. Uncle Emeka had continued his investigation, making more calls, asking more questions. The looks he gave Chidi had shifted from suspicion to confusion to something that might have been grudging respect. On the 4th day after surgery, when her father was awake and lucid, sitting up in bed and complaining about the hospital food, Adeeze's mother gathered the family. The private room was crowded, her parents, Uncle Emeka, Aunt Nkiru, her sisters, and her. Chidi stood by the window, his posture relaxed but his eyes serious. Okay, young man, Adeeze's father said, his voice still weak but gaining strength. I'm alive because of you. I owe you my life. But I think we all deserve to understand who saved me, who my daughter married. Start from the beginning. Chidi took a deep breath. My full name is Chidi Bube Joshua Okafor. I'm 32 years old. I own a logistics company called CJ Okafor Logistics Limited. He pulled out his phone, called up documents, and passed it to Uncle Emeka. Those are our registration papers, tax certificates, business permits, everything legal and proper. Uncle Emeka scrolled through the documents, nodding slowly. I started the company 2 years ago, Chidi continued. Before that, I worked as a software developer for a tech startup in Lagos. When that company was acquired by a bigger firm, I got a payout. Not huge, but enough to make a choice. I could stay in tech, or I could do something different. He moved away from the window, his voice becoming more animated as he told his story. I chose logistics because I saw an opportunity. Small and medium businesses in Enugu needed reliable, affordable freight services. Most of the big logistics companies focused on large contracts. I saw a gap in the market. So you started with what? Her father asked. 50,000 naira loan from a friend, plus 80,000 I'd saved from my tech job. I bought a used truck, hired one driver, and started moving goods between Enugu and Onitsha for market traders. Slept in the truck some nights because I couldn't afford a hotel. Ate one meal a day to save money. He smiled slightly at the memory. First year was hard, very hard, but I reinvested every profit. Bought a second truck after 6 months, a third after another 6 months, hired good people, treated them well, built a reputation for reliability. By the end of the first year, I had 5 trucks. By the end of the second year, I had 10 trucks, 2 small warehouses, and about 30 employees. But why Okada? Adezi's mother asked. If your business was successful, why would you ride motorcycle like you have nothing? Chidi's face grew serious. Because 3 years ago, before I started the logistics company, I was engaged to a woman named Chiamaka. The name hung in the air. Adesi felt her stomach tighten. We'd been together for 3 years. I was doing well in tech, making good money. Chiamaka was beautiful, educated, from a good family. Everyone said we were perfect together. His voice grew harder. 2 weeks before our wedding, I came home early from a business trip. I heard her in the living room with her mother, laughing, talking. I was about to walk in when I heard my name. He paused, the pain of the memory visible on his face. Chiamaka was telling her mother how she'd finally secured the bag, how she never really loved me, but I made enough money that it didn't matter. How once we were married, she'd take control of the finances, convince me to put assets in her name, systematically position herself to have power over everything I'd built. Aunt Nkiru gasped. Adaizi's mother put her hand over her mouth. Her mother was giving her advice, Chidi continued, his voice tight, telling her how to manipulate me after marriage, how to make me feel guilty if I questioned her spending, how to isolate me from friends who might see what she was doing. They were planning it like a military operation, the systematic takeover of my life and my assets. What did you do? Adezi's father asked quietly. I walked in, confronted them. Chiamaka didn't even deny it. She just got angry that I'd spied on her. Said I should be grateful any woman wanted to marry me. Her mother called me ungrateful. Said I was lucky Chiamaka had chosen me. He laughed bitterly. I called off the wedding that day, paid all the vendors anyway so her family wouldn't lose face financially. But something in me broke. He looked directly at Adezi now. I didn't trust anyone after that. Couldn't tell who was real and who was performing. I'd see women looking at me and wonder if they saw me or my bank account, made friends and questioned their motives. It was exhausting. So when I got the payout from the tech startup, when I had enough money to start fresh, I made a decision. You became an Okada rider, Uncle Emeka said, understanding dawning in his voice. Yes, I started my logistics company, but hired excellent managers to run it. I worked on strategy and big decisions, but day to day, I let them handle it. And I bought a motorcycle, started riding, started living simply, started seeing people as they really are when they think you have nothing they want. He moved to stand in front of Adezi. Most people failed that test. They were cruel to the Okada rider, dismissed him, spoke to him like he was less than human. But Ada, his voice softened. Ada was different. She said thank you. She asked about my day. She worried when I coughed. She saw me as a person, not a service provider. Adezi felt tears building behind her eyes. I didn't plan to fall in love with you, Chidi said to her. I was just grateful for basic human kindness. But somewhere in those months of conversation I fell. Hard. And I wanted to know, if I married you as Chidi the Okada rider, would you stay? Would you choose me when it cost you everything? So you tested me, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, and I'm sorry. So sorry for the pain it caused you. for watching you suffer while I stayed silent, for making you carry burdens without giving you the tools to understand them. He took her hands. But Ada, I needed to know. After Chimaka, after being used, I needed to know that someone could love me for myself. Not for what I could provide, not for status or comfort, but for who I actually am. The room was silent except for the beeping of hospital monitors. Adaza's father spoke first. Young man, what you did was manipulative. It was a test that put my daughter through hell. Yes, sir. But I also understand it. When you've been betrayed the way you were, trust becomes complicated. Her father's eyes were sharp, assessing. The question is, are you done testing? Or is this going to continue? Ada never knowing what's real and what's performance. I'm done, Chidi said firmly. Completely done. From now on, full transparency, full partnership. Ada will know everything. My business finances, my decisions, my life. No more secrets, no more tests. He turned back to Addie's. I love you. I've loved you since the 4th month of knowing you, when you insisted on sharing your umbrella with me in the rain, even though you were the customer. I've loved you through every moment of this marriage, the money, the business. Those are just details. You are what matters. You are what I was afraid to lose, which is why I protected it so badly. Adais looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd saved her father's life without hesitation, who'd endured her family's contempt with dignity, who'd defended their choice even when it would have been easier to reveal the truth, who'd been hurt so badly that he'd built walls around his heart and asked her to climb them blind. I'm angry, she said finally. I'm hurt that you didn't trust me enough to be honest from the beginning. I'm furious that you watched me suffer and said nothing. I know, but I also understand why you did it. And I know, with absolute certainty, that I didn't marry you for money, because I didn't know you had any. I married you because you saw me, because you made me feel valued, because loving you felt real in a way nothing else ever had. She squeezed his hands. I forgive you, not because you deserve it. You put me through hell and we both know it, but because I want our marriage to move forward, not stay stuck in the past. Because I want us to be partners, fully honest partners, from today forward. Chidi pulled her into his arms and she let herself cry against his chest. Relief, anger, love, fear, all of it pouring out in tears that had been building for 6 months. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for seeing past my mistakes to what I was trying to protect. Don't make me regret this, she whispered back. I won't. I swear, Ada. I'll spend the rest of our life proving you can trust me. When they finally pulled apart, the room had transformed. Her mother was crying quietly. Her sisters were hugging each other. Uncle Emeka looked thoughtful, Aunt Nkiru stunned. Her father cleared his throat. Chidi, I'm too weak to give speeches right now, but hear this. You saved my life. You love my daughter. You've proven you have character, even if your methods were questionable. You have my blessing to marry Ada. He smiled slightly, which I realize you don't need since you're already married, but you have it anyway. Thank you, sir. But hurt her again. Her father's voice went hard. And money won't protect you from a father's wrath. Are we clear? Completely clear, sir. Will they finally marry? Will Adaizi's family accept her husband? Or stop the wedding completely? This is only the beginning. Like this video and subscribe now so you don't miss part 2. And comment part 2 with where you're watching from. I read every comment.